How many amazing things and ancient artifacts are found in India, and this time, one man had a real hysteria when a treasure was found on his site. Gold, silver, and even a huge ruby. Why this man was hysterical and left without stopping, you will find out in this video. Watch it to the end. You will also see a pregnant mummy, an ancient Roman safe, and the heads of the gods. Hi friend, you're on the KirTop channel. The world's first pregnant mummy. The ancient Egyptian mummy, along with the sarcophagus, were donated to the University of Warsaw in 1826 and since 1917 have been kept in the National Museum of Warsaw. The mummy had a difficult fate. At first, it was attributed to the female sex, probably due to the complex sarcophagus, and in 1920, on the contrary, was identified as a man. On the sarcophagus, they found the male name, KirTop, who held a high position in society, was a scribe, priest, and son of a certain Padiamonipat. But a 2016 computed tomography showed that a completely different mummy may be lying in the KirTop sarcophagus. Its bones turned out to be too fragile for a man. There were no male genitals, but probably there was a breast. Scientists have suggested that another mummy was deliberately placed in the sarcophagus in order to pass it off as a more expensive artifact, which were so prized in the market for antiquity lovers in the 19th century. Therefore, the identity of the woman cannot be established. However, according to its remains, scientists from the Polish Academy of Sciences and Warsaw University were able to understand that the woman was mummified with great care and a rich set of amulets. This suggests that she also held a high position in society. In addition, scientists have found that the woman died a little over 2,000 years ago, around the 1st century BC. At the time of her death, she was between 20 and 30 years old, but most importantly, she was pregnant at about 26-30 weeks. The tomography showed the tiny feet of the fetus in the womb of the mummy. The researchers say that this is the first such find. The fact is that in the event of the death of a pregnant woman, the fetus was probably removed from the body before mummification. Otherwise, how else to explain the absence of such finds? The cause of death of the mysterious lady, according to experts, could have been the same pregnancy, the main factor in the deaths of young women in those days. Safe over 1,600 years old. The find was made during excavations of the Roman Villa Casa del Mitrio. The villa was located near the ancient city of Augusta Emerita, the former capital of the Roman Lusitania. The complex of buildings was built at the end of the beginning of the 2nd century. In the following centuries, the building was rebuilt and expanded several times. The archaeologists named the Villa Casa del Mitrio because next to it there was a temple dedicated to the god Mithra. In the 4th century, the villa was destroyed by fire and has not been rebuilt since then. According to experts, the villa belonged to a very wealthy family. During excavations in 1994, scientists found the remains of a chest bound with metal. However, the condition of the tree caused them concern, so they decided to leave the chest in place, postponing its extraction. For several years, they prepared for a more thorough excavation and continued their research in 2017. The chest was deformed due to the effects of fire when the burning roof of the villa collapsed on it. The current dimensions of the chest are 3 by 1.5 meters. Experts cannot restore the original appearance of the product. Similar chests in ancient Rome were called arch of Ferrata. They were used as safes to store jewelry, coins, and important documents. So far, only 4 such boxes have been found, with 3 in Pompeii and 1 in northeastern Spain. Mausoleum of Emperor Augustus. The mausoleum, built 2 millennia ago for the first Roman Emperor Augustus, is finally reopened to the public after 14 years of restoration. The restoration project cost $12.25 million. The first emperor of Rome, Augustus, ruled the empire for a total of 40 years. In 28 BC he built for himself and his relatives a huge mausoleum in the very center of the city on the Champ de Mars. The structure was round tomb with a diameter of 87 meters, consisting of several cylindrical pancakes planted one on top of the other. The tiers of the tomb were decorated with cypresses, and a bronze statue of the emperor towered at the very top. The height of the structure was 44 meters. At the beginning of the 5th century, Rome was captured by the Visigoths and the tomb was plundered. Urns were stolen and the ashes were scattered, but the invaders did not destroy the building. time gradually destroyed it. In the 30s of the 20th century, during the reign of Mausoleum, who considered himself the successor of Augustus, it was decided to revive the former glory and grandeur of the mausoleum and to restore it. The work was started, but then the war came and the large-scale restoration had to be forgotten for a long time. The city authorities seriously returned to this issue only 5 years ago as part of a $2.5 million mausoleum restoration project. The restoration was completed in December last year, and from March 1st, visitors began to enter the tomb. Augustus was the first Roman emperor and spearheaded the transformation of the Republic into empire after his great-uncle and adoptive father, Julius Caesar, was assassinated. The last words of Augustus were, "I took Rome as a city of brick, I leave it to you as a city of marble." The greatest blacksmith of Japan. Master Masamune was considered the greatest blacksmith of Japanese swords. The exact years of his life are not known, but he made most of his blades between 1288 and 1328. Masamune became famous for creating a fundamentally new technique for making blades, in which 4 strips of steel folded together 5 times. The result was a steel package consisting of 128 layers. It is believed that Masamune refused to sign his blades because they could not be counterfeited. There is a legend that tells of a test in which the famous gunsmith and student of Masamune, Sansa Muramasa, challenged his teacher to find out whose swords were the best. Both worked tirelessly, and when the blades were ready, they decided to check the results. The test was that each of them thrust his sword into the bottom of a stream overgrown with lotus so that the blade, washed by the flowing water, was facing upstream. Muramasa's sword, Yuchi Osamu, cut through everything that came his way, leaves floating in a stream, fish, and even air. Very impressed by the work of his disciple, Masamune also lowered his blade named Yavarakati into the stream and began to wait patiently. However, the blade caught only the leaves floating in the water without harming either the fish or the wind. After a while, Muramasa began taunting his teacher, chiding him for his apparent lack of skill. Smiling to himself, Masamune drew his sword from the water, dried it, and put it in its sheath. Then a monk approached them, all this time observing the test, and bowed deeply to both masters. Then he told them what he had seen. The first sword was beautiful, but it is a bloodthirsty, evil blade, since it does not distinguish between whom and what to cut. It will be equally successful in chopping butterflies and cutting off their heads. The second sword was much better, since it did not unnecessarily cut what was innocent and unworthy. Since then, it is believed that the naked blade of Muramasa will not return to its scabbard until it tastes blood, even if it is the blood of its own owner. Hysteria over treasure. This incident took place in early April in India, in a village called Pemberdi in the state of Telangana. During construction work, an excavator unscrewed a copper vessel filled with jewels from the ground. After research, it turned out that there were 20 gold earrings and 51 gold bats, as well as 11 chains of the same noble metal. The total weight of gold items was 189 grams. In addition, the vessel also contained 1.72 kilograms of silver, as well as a ruby weighing 6.5 grams. The treasures, of course, evoke different emotions among the diggers, but the Hindu, the owner of the land where the treasures were found, threw a real hysteria. He laughed hysterically like a man possessed, and local onlookers tried to calm him down. Of course, if you look at the situation in more detail, then hysteria of the owner of the land can be easily explained. The fact is that if the examination confirms that the jewelry is more than 100 years old, then the treasure will be completely transferred to the estate's ownership, and there is no doubt that they are over 100 years old. It is noted that experts have already begun excavations at the place where the treasures were discovered, but so far nothing else has been found. There are suggestions that an ancient temple once stood on this piece of land, and the jewelry was a kind of offering to the local goddess. Naturally, the indigenous people immediately organized a place of worship, brought flowers, incense, and began to pray. India is India, but the one who found the treasure is really a pity. Cleared the cross of 1,000 years of plague. In 2014, treasure hunter Derek McLennan found a silver artifact with an Anglo-Saxon design in a field of the southwest of Scotland. The artifact turned out to be the tip of the iceberg. In total, the friends unearthed over 100 gold and silver objects. Galloway Hoard turned out to be the largest collection of Viking artifacts in the UK. In 2017, the artifacts were donated to the National Museum of Scotland. Since then, curatists and restorers have been working with the finds, and so they published another cleaned-up artifact. This Anglo-Saxon cross has lain in the earth for about 1,000 years. It was very difficult to clean because of the silver chain, the wire wound around the intestines of the animal. In the end, the restorers decided to use a sharpened porcupine needle that was sharp enough to scrape off dirt, but not hard enough to damage the elaborate ornamentation. The ornament was made in yellow and gold. The cross depicts the 4 apostles of the Christian New Testament: Matthew as a man, Mark as a lion, Luke as a calf, and John as an eagle. The find is unique. From the 9th century, only one other Anglo-Saxon cross has been found, and it is made much less skillfully. Most likely, such a beautiful cross belonged to a king or a very high-ranking member of the clergy. Probably the Vikings stole it and all the other artifacts of the Galloway treasure during a raid on a monastery. Head of the god Hermes. The Greek Ministry of Culture reported that during the planned work to clean up the sewage collector on the Athenian St. Iron Square, a well-preserved marble head of the god Hermes was found. The sculpture dates back to around 300 BC. The find was transferred to the Athenian Epora of Antiquities. Hermes, tetrahedral pillars with the head or bust of Hermes on top, were ubiquitous in ancient Greece. They were installed at the borders of land plots, along roads, as intersections, on city streets and squares. Over time, images of other gods began to be placed on the Hermes, but still Hermes appeared on them most often. The head found in Athens was also once the upper part of a herm. It is made in the style of the famous sculptor of the second half of the 5th century BC. Alcmena, one of whose famous works was Hermes Propylaeus at the entrance to the Acropolis of Athens. In the future, his works were reproduced many times, and the heads of Hermes in the style of Alcmene are now in the Getty Museum, Istanbul Archaeological Museum, and the Metropolitan Museum. There are 2 such sculptures in the State Hermitage Museum. Both of them are Roman copies from Greek originals and were found in Italy. Your comments help me develop this channel and fill it with even more interesting content. Share videos with your friends and press your thumb up. Thanks for your views. Bye everyone!